Communications is indeed very important, especially as it concerns communications between government and the people. There cannot be any form of governance if there isn't any communications. That's the reason why most governments, before they start off anything governance, they tend to speak to the people. They tend to listen to the people, and they put down what exactly the people are talking about. That's a form of communication. But then, how have this communication worked for people across board, for governments, for the citizens? How much of that do we have? To the extent that the citizens sometimes don't even believe what the government says, because oftentimes these communications have been trampled upon. Many persons have tried gaining information from the government, but they don't really have the opportunities to. We have a communications expert who would x-ray this particular topic for us, Dr. John Asamudu Nkamiang. John is a broadcast and communication specialist. Good to have you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be on the show this morning.
All right, Dr. John, can you tell us a little more about what you think about the importance of communication in governance?
We cannot overly emphasize the importance of communication in every sphere of life, talk more in governance. The absence or inadequacy of development communication within Nigeria's government structure is a significant issue that contributes to various developmental challenges. And it's critical that we begin to appreciate the place of communication, especially when it comes to governance and government. Understanding development communications is the strategy or strategic use of communication to promote positive social image. It involves engaging with communities, disseminating information, and fostering dialogue to support developmental initiatives. So, if you break down what I just said, the basic question would be whether government at all levels, be it federal, be it state, be it local government, which is supposed to be even closer to the people, whether they have over time, engaged communities, disseminated information, and not just disseminate information, have they disseminated the right kind of information to elicit the right kind of reaction and feedback from the people? And of course, have they been able at all those levels, federal, state, local government, to be able to foster dialogue to support developmental initiatives? And these will tell you largely, or it will give you a bigger picture as to whether we have truly made the kind of developmental strides, both as a nation and as a people, if government at all levels have effectively been able to utilize the strategic use of communication to, one, share their developmental ideas or suggestions to the people, and the feedback, if at all they get any feedback, what they have done with that feedback to be able to, further improve the lives and the economic structure of the nation. So it's not just about broadcasting information. It's about creating a two-way flow of communication that will in turn empower people to participate in their own development. And when what that means is that development is not just about building infrastructure, it's not just about building systems, because people will use those systems. People will be directly the direct or indirect beneficiary of whatever kind of infrastructure that government puts in place. So it is critical that government, passes information that helps to empower people to understand their role at all levels, whether it is at the federal, whether it is at the state, or whether it's at the local government level, to understand their roles in participating in developmental strides or developmental projects that will directly or indirectly affect them. So it is a conversation that should be constantly on the table, as it were. But sadly, in Nigeria and most parts of Africa, governments do not truly appreciate what developmental communication is. They just feel that it should be a bottom-down kind of arrangement where government just tells you what it wants to do without expecting that you just take it hook, line, and sinker. And typical case, if let's look at the tax reform bill, for instance, that Mr. President
Dr. John?
had put it before the National Assembly, had
Okay.
not some, yeah.
Okay, Dr. John, just hold that thought. You had mentioned that the problem of misinformation, disseminating the wrong information, and now it leads to the question of what role does misinformation play in the lack of effective development communication in Nigeria? Can you hear me, Mr. John?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me as
Okay,
well.
so I was asking, what role does misinformation play in the lack of effective development communication in Nigeria, and how can the government address this issue of misinformation?
That's a very good question because lack of effective information dissemination, for instance, government policies and programs often fail to reach the intended beneficiaries, especially in the grassroots or in the rural areas. So that in itself will result in underdevelopment. So no matter what physical infrastructure government may put at that level, if those policies and programs that are hinged on that policy or infrastructure does not reach the intended people, then government has failed at that point. So it's an effort in futility. Of course, there are gaps between policy formulation and policy implementation, often due to poor communication. That is why a lot of good policies, with good intentions, end up, in the doldrums, not having the effect that they should have on the people, because that communication, there's a communication gap, and government, most cases, has not been able to identify the fact that there is a communication gap. And because they've not been able to identify that there's a communication gap, they also lack the capacity to be able to close that gap, to ensure that whatever policies, whatever systems they want to put in place reach the desired target. So insufficient or lack of communication, especially on the part with regards to developmental communication, can result in a lot of setbacks.
Okay, we've talked about the government communicating with citizens. Now, in what ways can Nigerian government build a stronger link or a communication link whereby the marginalized, the women, the children, and the rest can actually give a feedback or respond to certain things that the government has communicated?
One of the key tools in developmental communication that government can use is community engagement. One of the examples is what we know as town hall meetings. The need to constantly constantly hold town hall meetings, community engagement, sample the minds and the reactions of the people at, at every possible opportunity. Because, as I said when we started this conversation, feedback is necessary. Why? One, to be sure that that developmental project, that policy that government wants to implement, whether it meets the aspirations and the yearnings of the people, the community in which that developmental project is to take place. And without adequate consultation with local communities, this naturally would lead to lack of ownership and sustainability. And that accounts for why we have a lot of white elephant projects across various parts of the country. You go to some communities, they need motorable roads to be able to move their wares from the rural areas to the urban areas. But rather than give them road, government is giving them water. Now, one would say, but water is important. But for the people at that point in time, water is not the challenge. The challenge is mobility. Challenge is accessibility. And that is why there is a need for participatory communication, which is an approach that involves communities in decision making. So at that point, government can compare what they may think is a priority for the people as compared to what the people truly want. And that in itself is what guarantees that people can get or will truly get the dividends of democracy.
Well, so many times we've seen this, communication breakdown between government and the people, so much so that you have most citizens not even believing what the government would say to them. What causes this type of disbelief, or this type of quagmire, this disagreements? In campaigns, you hear a particular person saying one thing, and as soon as they take over power, they totally do something totally different from what they have promised. So you would wonder, as a citizen of a nation, in order for you to contribute to the communication with government, when there is a deliberate means of not being sincere to the people, you wonder, how do you even navigate?
First of all, we must understand that I think the first question should be, who did these public officers or politicians consult? What form of consultation did they have with the people to come out with their manifestos? And that is why, to a large extent, they make political promises that they know they cannot fulfill because they didn't consult anybody. They just assumed that whatever promises they put in their manifestos, that is what the people want. So there cannot be effective communication without effective feedback. That anywhere you find a weak feedback mechanism, what often happens is lack of uh, 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 that system will never be result oriented. That's just the fact about it. Because the government often, okay, let's look at the chain, for instance. You have an individual, a politician, who has made campaign promises that were not hinged on any proper feedback, on any proper consultation with the people, with his constituency, right? Now, he gets into office. It is only natural that because there was no proper consultation, nobody will hold him or her accountable. The constituencies, cannot say that they had an engagement where there was an agreement as to, oh, this is what we want, this is how we want it done, this is, and then the politician will say, okay, based on government policy, this project may take 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 3 years. so that the people at that point know that they have an idea of the timeline and time frame in which that project will be implemented within their community, and that gives them, that empowers them to be part of the monitoring process of how that project is being implemented. So anywhere there is weak feedback mechanism, you must expect that promises will not be kept. The people will be at the receiving end because, one, due consultation did not take place, proper engagement did not take place, and the feedback is almost non-existent. So what you see in return is the reaction you mentioned, because people now will react to say, wait a minute, we didn't ask for this. You never asked us what we wanted. We don't want this. You understand? And it becomes a topsy-turvy affair between the leaders and the people, and you see a whole lot of resistance from the people. But where effective communication is existent, and there's proper feedback mechanism, especially for the public official who is constantly consulting his or her constituency, getting that feedback, articulating that feedback into strategy, and effectively implementing that strategy, then you will see that people will be happier, there will be less friction, there will be less confrontation, and you will see that the developmental stride will constantly be, progressive.
How do we leverage social media, technology, or even AI, in improving communications between the government and the Nigerian citizen?
Um, Technology and AI, as it were, are good developments, especially for those of us in the 21st century going into the 22nd. And it is important to understand that technology and AI, as it were, are tools for advancement, tools for improvement, tools because to be quite honest, in this part of the world, we are still on the back foot. While we are still grappling with new technology like 5G, the rest of the world, the developed clime, are already talking 7G and the likes. And AI is already becoming an integral part of their system. We lack, as it were, the framework to be able to effectively deploy AI, artificial intelligence, as it were, to integrate our governance system and also integrate our people. Why? There are so many factors. The level of education, the literacy rate, in as much as the numbers suggest that people are becoming more tech savvy because they're purchasing smartphones, and that in itself is exposing them to new trends. There is no deliberacy on the part of government to inculcate um, latest tech trends, or will I say latest um, technology literacy. You will see in some developed land, government deliberately help their citizenry to understand the use of new technology, and how it will affect their lives at different levels. This has not happened in Nigeria. What we've seen in the tech space in Nigeria is the fact that it is the younger part of the demographic that are more tech savvy, and the tech, and that's why we see a whole lot of activity within the tech space, and that's why there are, in recent times, there's been a whole lot of talk about AI. Sadly, the narrative in the public space is more, it is more of apprehension when it comes to AI, because the narrative is that, oh, AI, when fully implemented, will take over your jobs, and so it's creating an environment of skepticism, an environment of apprehension, rather than an environment that should naturally look at how to integrate AI and fully utilize the potentials it offers to further develop our society and our country. So the question here is, what how does government now, using the tools of developmental communication, effectively redirect the mindset and the narrative with regards to AI, and then give a policy direction as to how AI will significantly, but most importantly, positively impact us as a people and as a nation. And once the government can do that, it's not just enough to have a ministry of new tech, green technology, and all of that. No, beyond all of that, that ministry should now be at the should be the arrowhead, in conjunction with the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Social Welfare, to be able, collaboratively, be able to orientate, engage the people, sensitize the people, and begin to make the people understand that these are modern day tools that should improve their lifestyle and their areas of endeavor.
All right. Dr. John Nkamiang, many thanks. We truly appreciate your insights. It's been one valuable one we would cherish for a very long time. Many thanks for your time, sir.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.